Hey friends, welcome to Liseybelle Laine. This is the space that we're creating to make, learn, and grow together. My name is Elise. I'm your host in this internet space, and today I'm coming with a primarily knitting podcast. So let's get into it. Okay, so first up, you probably have noticed, if you're attentive, that I am wearing my finished Felix pullover, which I showed you last time. All that was left was to weave in the ends and block it, which I did pretty quickly after that. I was really surprised. I know I mentioned how sheepy this smelled. There was a lot of lanolin still in the yarn, so when I washed it, the water was like running yellowy brown because all of that grease was coming out. And that's where the like sheepy smell came from, was from all of the grease still in the yarn, which isn't a problem at all. I was just surprised because I'm not used to commercial yarns keeping that much of the, it's called like in the grease, keeping that much of the grease left in the fiber when they produce it, but they did. But I just want to let you know that was part of why it smelled as sheepy as it did. So it's a great fit. I'm really pleased with it overall. Show you the length. It hits, let's see, this is the top of my hip bone, so right kind of at my waistband where my pants usually would fall. The sleeves are a little long, but I've got them rolled up today. And it is a scratchier, sort of woolier sweater, and I cannot wear it next to my bare skin. I really want to be less sensitive to that kind of thing than I am, but I think it takes practice, like sort of getting your skin desensitized to it. And also there are just some wools that are really meant more so to be outerwear, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not every material is meant for every use. So far, I have found it most comfortable to wear this sweater with a collared shirt just because it keeps it off of my neck. And then definitely long sleeves. I have a long sleeved like crew neck t-shirt, and that works okay too because this neckline is a little bit wider. I told you once I blocked it, it would open up, and it did. So it's a little bit wider than your standard t-shirt neckline, so that works as well. But the collared shirt is like extra convenient just because the collar keeps it off of my neck. But I wouldn't be able to wear this with like short sleeves or without anything underneath it just because of how scratchy it is, but I really like it for this use. It's already pilling quite a bit. You can see like all the little bumps on it. I imagine with how rustic this wool is that once I have a gleaner which shaves off the little pilly bits. Once I do that a few times, I imagine this will quit pilling, but I was a little surprised to find that it was pilling as much as it was. So this is finished object number 1. Finished object number 2, Josh's mitts. I showed you last time I had only a little bit of one thumb left to do. It was not a big deal to finish these off. And on last Friday, he was going to be out at a work event that he needed to be outdoors for, and it was cold. And I was like, how about I just go ahead and finish these for you so that you can wear them? They're way too big on me, but they're a good fit for him. Like on me, this is my wrist, and it comes like way down, but that's okay because they're not for me. That's why that's okay, guys. Whew. Okay. But these are Thrummed mittens, which I talked about how you make the thrums a little bit in the last episode and showed them off. I have not washed these yet because I knew they wouldn't be dry in time for when he needed to wear them. But it's actually, despite the sweater, it's actually pretty warm out today. It's in the 60s, so it might be a good day to go ahead and give these a wash. I don't expect them to change just like a ton with blocking, but it'd be good. I am noticing there's quite a bit of fuzzing where I used the lighter color fibers. Actually, there's fuzzing everywhere, but it's more visible in the lighter color fibers. But I've never made thrummed mittens before, so I don't know how much of that is normal or will continue to happen. I may give them a glean as well and just kind of see if eventually they kind of like felt into place, which is what I imagine will happen. So they're done, which is great. So, update on works in progress from last time. So last time I showed you the socks that I was working on with the maker's cuff in Urth Yarns fingering weight. And I am most of the way through the legs of both socks. I have had the wildest time trying to match my own gauge from the first sock. I don't know what happened. So here's sock number 1. Here's sock number 2. They're kind of patterning differently, which is fun. For whatever reason, this sock, I have knit it when I'm too stressed, too relaxed. I don't know what. I'll have rows that are really tight, rows that are way too loose. The whole sock will be really baggy. I've ripped it back and started from the cuff probably 4 times, which at this point, the amount of knitting I've put into these, it should be a finished pair of socks, but it's not. I think I'm on track now, and I'm close to having the second leg done, which will be good. One of the times I restarted, I ended up deciding to just I had split it into 2 balls, one for each sock, but I was noticing that one end of the skein, so one of the balls, didn't get as much of the darker brown color in it. So the second sock was coming up a lot lighter overall than the first sock. So one of the times I ripped back, there was also a knot in the skein, which was going to throw off the reason that it does this whole shape is the exact circumference of the sock and number of stitches lines up with the length of each color dye. So if you remove a 6 or 12 inch section, it will throw off this striping effect because it'll all skew that many stitches over. So there had been a knot and it was coming up lighter than I wanted. And so one of the times that I went back to the cuff, I ended up just pulling from the opposite end of the ball I used for the first sock. So both of these I'm working from the same 50 gram ball right now. And I'm finding the color is coming up a lot more evenly. You can see we've got the darker brown coming through a lot better. Although the pooling is different between the 2 socks, which is really interesting. I really like it. I don't know what I'm going to make the fronts and the backs. It's going to be a tough choice, but I'm going to have to choose soon when I put the heels in. So they're coming along. It's my out of the house doing other things kind of knitting. And I've had a discovery, which I'm sure many of you have already discovered. And I think if you follow Hohi Locatelli, who is a knitwear designer and YouTuber and bag maker. I think she makes a sort of knitter's fanny pack, waist pack. And there's been different, I think Hyde and Hammer had a waist bag. There have been waist packs for knitting for a while. I just never had one. But my husband and I are getting ready in about 5 weeks, toward the end of March, to go to Tokyo. And this is the first big trip we've taken in a long time. And so I've been getting together some things to hopefully make it go smoothly, like supportive walking shoes and a good travel bag and things like that. And one of the things I got was this fanny pack. And we've been going for walks to get in the habit of walking more, because with my fatigue, I definitely notice that I tire out really easily, and so I don't walk a lot. but I'm going to want to walk a lot when we're in Tokyo. So I'm trying to acclimate my body over the few weeks between now and then to walking around more, also breaking in the new walking shoes, all the things. And so I stuck my socks in this fanny pack, which is plenty of room for them. And it is the easiest hands-free knitting while walking setup ever. I may wear this fanny pack everywhere. I wore it to church Sunday over a dress. It was not cute, but it was very practical. So some people just came by who are apparently going to work on the roof. We rent, so they don't really tell us anything. They're just like, hey, someone might be by today. Cool. Didn't know. Hopefully that's not noisy, but I think all I was saying was that this is super convenient, whether it's cute or not, and I am kind of hooked on it. So, big fan of the fanny pack for knitting. And then last time I showed you that I was planning to cast on the Rosedale vest by Lily Kate France. And I'm really kind of surprised how much I've gotten done since the last podcast. So I cast it on. I knit most of the body and then realized I had chosen a size too big. Annoying. So I frogged it, started over, and knit the whole vest. So this is blocked. It, I think, is basically dry. I'm not 100% sure it's dry all the way through, but I haven't woven in the ends yet. I'm not sure how great of a look it's going to be over the sweater and shirt combo because I'm wearing lots of layers of thick wool. But it's meant to be a cropped, tight-fitting vest. This is a ridiculous look, you guys. But I'm happy with it. It's the same kind of deal with this yarn where it's not something I would want to wear next to my skin. So I felt like a vest was a good choice for it because it will always be over something else, which will make it a lot more comfortable to wear in the long term. These are I was talking about other buttons that I had gotten for my Nydia test knit that ended up being too big. They're from Button Bin on Etsy. And I think that they're going to end up being about the right size for this. I basically knit it to pattern, except that I had a little trouble picking up the right number of stitches for the button band because it said for the ribbing and the body, it just said knit to this length. This part had specific rows, but I think my row gauge was slightly off because when I knit to that specific length, it didn't give me enough edge to pick up all of the stitches I was supposed to pick up for the button band. So that meant that the row for adding the buttonholes in particular didn't work out quite right for me. And in the end, I decided that I would rather have 5 buttons and the pattern only included 4. So I just modified that to add a 5th buttonhole and work with the stitch count that I had. Hopefully that sort of makes sense. I think now that I'm really doing this YouTube thing for real, I should probably start doing Ravelry project pages for these things just so that I can document kind of like what happened with each thing as I worked on it, if you're interested in going and referencing and getting some more details on that. I know Ravelry is kind of a mixed bag for people. There have been a lot of accessibility issues with the website, and those weren't handled super well or well at all. So I don't want to be exclusive in the way that I share that information. I just am not really sure. I've not been great personally or prioritized tracking and documenting the details of my knitted projects. So I don't really know the best way to start doing that. I know Ravelry is pretty convenient for a lot of people, but not everyone. So I'm thinking about it. I'm going to kind of see. I did have to make a Ravelry page for the Nydia test knit. And I could see how that would be helpful going forward. So if you have thoughts about that, let me know. I know a lot of you are not knitters, so otherwise you can just kind of tune out some of those finer details about stitch counts and button bands, but I am excited to have this. I think it'll be a nice warm layer and accessory piece. So I've just got to get the ends woven in and the buttons sewn on, and that will be ready to go. And then I had also talked to you about the Oatmeal sweater. I showed a picture of it last time. I did do some more yarn dyeing for that, but I ended up not casting it on yet. I got distracted. And what I got distracted with was I found a moth that was about the right size to be the kind that eats wool, which is pretty scary when you have as much wool in your house as I do. So I kind of freaked out. It was on the yarn shelf, like on the dresser that is under the yarn. I kind of freaked out and went through all the yarn on the shelf and like looked through each skein, tried to check to see if there was any evidence of moths having taken up residence. I don't know why that sentence is so hard for me to get through. I didn't really find much on that go through. So, but what happened was I put my hands on a lot of yarn that's just been sitting there, and I was like, ooh, that's nice. Ooh, that's nice. Ooh, I want to knit with that. So I cast on a new project that I hadn't planned on. It is, the name is not in English, but I think essentially it's like the Tulip jacket. It's a long cardigan with a sort of tulip shape and an all over lace pattern. And the yarn that I'm using, I am 100% sure doesn't exist anymore. It is from my mom's old stash, I'm guessing from the 90s. And then I overdyed it, so it's not even a color that existed if you could find the yarn. I've knit with it before. She had it in a couple of colors. Most of it was in this sort of like light pink color, which I'll show you that sweater sometime, I'm sure. But the other half was in blues and purples, which I did not see myself wearing. And so I ended up overdying it, and it came out this sort of purple, brown gray. And what it is, I think it's really funny because the trend right now is to knit things held with a strand of mohair silk. And this yarn is essentially a silk mohair and then a rayon, so a sort of synthetically produced cellulose fiber. And this is how it comes skein together with this mohair silk and rayon. But it knits up at quite a bulky gauge because of how fluffy it is and the two strands together. And it was really interesting to dye because the mohair silk is a protein fiber, which takes one type of dye called acid dyes. And the rayon is a cellulose fiber, which takes another type of dye called fiber reactive dye, and they don't dye each other. So the mohair silk, this strand that is now sort of a grayish brown, was blue. A shade of blue that is not my shade of blue. And the rayon strand, which is this sort of like color changing second strand, was purple and green and blue, I think. And so I used both kinds of dyes, as well as some RIT dye, which contains dye that will work on both types of fiber. And it all just adhered really differently, and because the colors underneath were different, the outcome was really different too. So I think this is probably what used to be green that looks very orange rust now. This here probably used to be more like a darker violet purple, and now it's very like magenta, wine colored. And it was just really fun to see how all these different colors took when I overdyed it. And it knits super fast. I'm on US size 11 needles for this. And it like came together. I mean, it's not done, but what I have came together like in a few days. It was wild. I had the same problem with this as I did with the Rosedale vest, where I cast on for one size, realized it was too big, and then had to start over, and still have like most of the body. So it's knitted bottom up, And I was starting to get a little bit worried about not having enough yarn. So I went ahead and knit one sleeve, and I think you're going to be fine for yarn. And then I wasn't sure if the sleeve was going to be the length I wanted since it was bottom up. So I went ahead and washed and blocked it just to see how long it was once it was washed. And I decided to add another repeat of the lace just to give me a little bit more length in the sleeve. But I have another repeat or two to go on the body once I get done with the sleeves. But this sleeve is almost done. And then it will all get joined together. So right now I've knit like up here, and then it'll all get joined together here for the yoke, and that will decrease down. I had paused on it a while. I waited for the sleeve to dry just to see what size it was going to be, and I haven't really gone back to it yet. But I know once I do, it'll go pretty quickly. I did decide, I had kind of stalled on this and kind of stalled on the Rosedale vest, and I decided I couldn't cast on anything else until I finished one of the two projects, and the Rosedale seemed faster, so I did it. And so this one is sort of just waiting on me to feel re-inspired, although with it being 62 degrees outside right now, a big, bulky mohair sweater is not really what I want to be knitting on. In the process of going through all of my yarn and fiber, and that's the thing. So I went through everything on the shelf, didn't find anything. Then I was like, okay, it's fine. It was probably not even a wool moth. If it was, maybe I got it before it laid eggs anywhere. Then I found a second moth. So I started going through all of my fiber stash, my fleeces, my unspun wool, and in the process of going through that, combined with needing to do some dyeing for my sister, I started doing a lot of fleece washing, yarn dyeing, and general like fiber processing to try to make sure there weren't any moths in my wool stash. So my sister and I picked a pattern for her sweater, which is in that hand-spun camel merino silk. Looks like this. And the pattern that we've chosen has stripes in 4 different colors plus this. So there's like a white stripe, and then we're going to do a blue, a green, and a sort of like dusty mauve wine kind of color. I don't really know what to call it. But I needed to do some overdying. So this is going to stay the sort of natural color. And I ordered some more acid dyes because that's the type that work with animal and protein-based fibers like silk, camel, and merino. And I dyed a skein this gorgeous blue. It always comes off a little bit lighter than it is. This looks pretty accurate to me. But because of the silk content, it has a shine to it that catches the light, which makes it look paler than it really is. But I'm really pleased with this. And I've decided to do one color at a time. And this is the first stripe, which will be followed by this. And then once I kind of have a sense for how far this one ball of yarn gets me, then I can start dyeing some of the other colors. But I have a limited amount of this because it's a hand spun, custom blended fiber that I have made. So my dyes came in for that, so I did some dyeing. I also needed to continue dyeing the Oatmeal sweater, which I did finish, and then I was washing fleece. So I just had wool and yarn and fiber literally everywhere. It was up to my elbows in hot water and wool. And our house smelled of wool. It was just everywhere. And we had 2 weeks of snow days. It was kind of crazy. I still didn't really find moths. I found a couple of maybe carpet beetle larvae, but they both looked dead and I couldn't find any damage. And I've now gone through, I say 3/4 of my wool yarn fiber stash, and I haven't really found anything. It's really hard to tell. Paranoia makes you is that a moth egg or is that just lint? I don't know. But I haven't found anything, so maybe I just don't know what wool moths look like. I've done a lot of Googling. I really thought I had diagnosed the issue correctly. But anyway, this is pretty like gray tan color. And I thought that if I just used a white wool with the camel and the silk, which the silk is pure white, that it would come out close enough to white for the lighter colored stripe, but it didn't. So I had to order some white camel fiber, which I have no idea how that works. It wasn't as white as I thought it would be. It was very like ivory creamy colored. And I ordered some like snow white merino, very, very unnaturally white. And so I carded that up over the past couple of days. So I have these floofy, soft, kind of dreamy bats so that I can spin one more skein of the yarn, which I'm kind of glad about because that means I have more of the other colors to dye. And this will just be the white stripe. So this will make up a decent amount of the sweater and I don't have to worry about being short on yarn. So these are the three colors I have so far for her sweater. And this was in the list of things I might have cast on, but then I got really worked up about another sweater option, which I'll show you very shortly. I also finished my spin, my Alexandra Art of Yarn. I think this is silk bamboo merino. And it is lovely. I don't really know what color it is. Like it's sort of, I don't know. It's got green and rust and gold in it. But it reads overall very different. I think I would like to maybe use this as a yoke for a colorwork sweater with like a forest green contrast is kind of what I'm thinking. But I have so many things to make. And sometimes it gets overwhelming because I want to like use it all and do it all justice and have all of the finished objects. But I also want to enjoy each and everything I'm working on and not like crazy rush through them. So I'm working on that balance. But I finished this. I finished the knitting on the Rosedale vest, and then I told myself I could. Oh, and I have knit several rows on the unicorn blanket. It doesn't look substantially different, but I am almost done with the edging where I will start on the chart. So I've even worked on that. I don't know how I got so much done because I also like cooked and went for walks and did like my job. It's been a very confusing couple of weeks for me. I'm not necessarily complaining because it feels almost like being healthy, which is nice. But anyway, then it occurred to me that whatever I knit next could be done in time to wear it in Tokyo. And what would I want to wear in Tokyo? And I don't think the Oatmeal sweater is it. So yeah, I decided to swatch with some yarn that I had bought. I've got 5 colors of yarn that I got at my local yarn store, localish yarn store. Sorry, I'm gathering up all of the balls. This was on sale a while ago. So I bought these 4 to be contrast colors. I think it is fur, bay, bronze, and snow. Winter. Oh, that was going to be so cool if I could have named all of those colors. I don't know. But this is Sunday Knits Eden. 3-ply. I don't think that's going to focus. 3-ply sport weight yarn, 100% finest merino. And initially I was like, there's no way this is a sport weight yarn because it is 50 grams of skein, 246 yards, which is like thinner than a fingering weight. But I went on the website for this yarn and they said that because of the woolen spun technique, which I wouldn't have necessarily guessed that it was woolen spun, but I can see it now that they say it. Which for those who are not knitters or spinners, woolen spun just means that it is sort of fluffier and less smooth and less dense. So it's got more air in it. The fibers are more like fluffy and disorganized, and it's not like very smooth. That's the closest I know how to explain that in a brief amount of time. But the website says because of the woolen spun nature, you get more yardage than you would expect, and that the yarn blooms quite a bit once it's soaked. So that means once it gets wet, the fibers like drink in all that water and they kind of poof out while they dry, and so that it will look more like the thickness of yarn I expect once it's washed. So I got these 4 contrast colors. And then this color, which is sort of a greeny gray, called Twig. It's interesting. Called Twig. This is the main color for the body. And my plan was just some kind of colorwork sweater. And I haven't been able to get the Lunenburg pullover out of my head since I saw it on Wool and Spinning. Rachel knit one with some hand spun and some commercial, or maybe it was all commercial. I don't really remember, but I thought that that would be a great pattern for it, and is sort of more like the color scheme of what I kind of imagine wearing on the trip. So I cast it on last night. Well, I swatched the night before and then cast it on last night. Here's my swatch. It is the softest, lightest wool ever, which is where I'm like, yeah, I believe that that is woolen. The micron count of this, so how soft a fiber feels to the touch depends on lots of factors, but the biggest one is the micron count, which is the measurement for how thick the diameter of the fiber is. So like thinking about like your hair is quite a bit thicker than like a single strand of silk, right? So silk feels a lot softer to the touch. The micron count on this is close to cashmere. It's like insanely soft, which usually would mean it wasn't going to be very durable, but they say on their website, again, that you can expect pilling the first few wears, but then the sweater will kind of harden off and start to like lightly felt, and then it shouldn't pill anymore, which is what I'm expecting with this sweater too, even though it's not as soft. But this is just like a delight to touch. Like I'm like, oh my gosh. And I would not have to wear a collared shirt under it. It would be soft enough to be next to my skin. Anyway, I've read so much, you guys. I started this last night. I am having such a blast with it. It is a colorwork yoke sweater, which means this part up here is going to have all the colors, and then the sleeves and the body are going to be that gray twig color. And it's got these like pearl bumps throughout, and if you have watched or familiar with the boho stickning knitting tradition, Fruity Knitting had a 2-part series on it that is really excellent and explains the history of how that all came about. But they were really well known for especially the texture in a colorwork yoke. And so this is a sort of boho inspired yoke by Savory Knitting, which is actually the same designer as the Felix that I'm wearing right now, Amy Christopher's. And it's just been a delight. The pattern does tell you to cast on your neckband ribbing first, but I just don't prefer to knit that way. So I cast on below that, and we'll come back and pick up and knit my neckband later. So this will close up more. This is the neck hole, but it won't be this wide, and it's not as wide as it looks, actually. But yeah, I'm having a blast with it. And it's why I didn't cast on the Oatmeal or anything else. because it's just got me hooked. So yeah, I'm really excited about it and all of the other things I have going. I've gotten a lot done, and in some moments that feels really good and I feel really accomplished, and then in other moments it feels like daunting, like, oh, I can't keep up this momentum. And I can't, guys. Like, we're not meant to go all out all the time. So I'm doing my best to take deep breaths, take it easy, do the things that are good for me, and continue like following what brings me joy so that I'll continue to feel inspired. This weekend I'm going to a conference about racism in the white church at Baylor, and I'm really looking forward to getting to hear some really excellent authors and speakers present on that topic and hopefully have some good conversations about that. In a couple weeks, I have a retreat for the small group leaders at my church, and then after that, it's Tokyo. So it's busy. It's a busy season. There's a lot going on, but I'm really grateful that I've had this sort of like couple of weeks of respite to just like make and create. My mental and physical health have both been kind of like bobbing up and down. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this few weeks of feeling slightly more on top of things bodes well for what's to come in the future. I'm glad to be here. I am hoping to get back into some kind of regular schedule, but like I said, I've got a lot of travel coming up, and I'm not sure how realistic that is. So I am doing my best to have grace with myself, and I thank you all for your grace with me too. In case you missed it, I did comment back to the prize draw for the 100 subscriber giveaway. The winner was username Kathleen Caudill, who is my mother-in-law. So if you didn't see my comment back to you, congratulations, you won. If you want to get in touch with me once you see this or once you find out, and we can talk about your prize. But thank you to all of you who have subscribed, have entered the giveaway, have supported me, and let me know that you're out there. It means a lot. I don't really know what I expect this YouTube channel to turn into, but knowing that there are people who are enjoying it is a big help. So if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel, and if you wouldn't mind liking or commenting below this video if you enjoyed what you saw today. And if you know any crafty friends, maybe share with them. Maybe they want to be here too. I promise I don't every time I podcast have like a bajillion things that I randomly made in the past couple weeks. But this time I don't know what happened. I just got I was going to say I got the bug. It was really, the moth came in my house, and then I looked at everything I had and I was like, I want to play with that, and I want to play with that. Anyway, I hope that you find some time for play this week, whether that be a hobby or however else that looks. I think we don't take enough time to play as adults, and I encourage you to find a way to do that this week. Anyway, I will see you next time. Bye.